Hello, and welcome to another episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr, where we talk about the art and culture of running an indie record label. I know from a lot of the people that have written in to the show, there's a lot of people who are actually not yet running a record label, but are thinking or dreaming about starting a record label. I love that. Even talked to one person who's guinea pigging their own band, their own project as the first release, and I love that. That makes a lot of sense. If you are in the process of starting a record label or currently run a record label, we have a free guide for independent labels, and you can get that at otherrecordlabels.com. Basically, we've condensed a lot of the information and wisdom from these past interviews and put it in this free guide, which you can get from otherrecordlabels.com. Today is a very exciting episode. We have Mike Park, who is the owner and founder and an artist on the label Asian Man Records, a label that is run out of his mom's garage for the past 25 years. What an honor to talk with Mike today. I know so many of our listeners are going to be stoked to hear this interview, and hopefully we're welcoming some new listeners to the show. And I want to give a shout out to my buddy Cam, who I hope is finally listening to the show. Thanks so much for doing this, Mike. It is such a huge honor to get a chance to talk with you today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm stoked to do it.
Do you have plans for a 30th? Like, are you coming up on a 30th, or have you hit that already?
We're coming up on 25.
Oh, 25. Okay.
25 will be next. Okay, this May is 24, then the following May.
Okay, there was something about you guys doing something in 1990. Is that wrong?
The Asian Man started in 96, May of 96. So
I see.
I had a label called Dill Records.
Right. Okay, maybe that's the confusion.
So that would be actually, 1990.
Okay. So this is like almost this. You could technically say a 30th of being in the business at least.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Putting out my first record, yes.
So 1996, and with that whole time, it's kind of infamous that you've run things out of your parents' garage. Is that true?
Yeah, still here. I'm sitting here right now. It's super. The problem with the garage, it's kind of slanted, so it goes underground a little bit. So it's
okay.
It's a basement feel.
Oh yeah.
With temperature wise, so I'm freezing.
Oh man. You've been that way for 25 years.
Yeah, it's great during the summer because it stays cool.
Oh, awesome. I see. Yeah.
But the winters are freezing.
And like, you must have intentionally kept things small and modest instead of, growing to like an office building with 100 people.
100%. I don't see the fun in doing that.
Really? There's never
that seems like a headache.
Yeah, I agree. Is it just you, or do you have interns? Do you have help?
I have one guy that comes in 3 times a week for 3 hours a day.
And
then I have what I'll do if I need help. I usually post something on social media saying, "Can anybody come help pack records?"
Oh my gosh.
It never fails. We'll get like a crew of 5 people will come in.
Oh, wow. And you can pay them in records.
Yep.
Yeah. I read somewhere, so let's go back to the beginning. I read somewhere, and this maybe was the time of Dill, but like that you saw other bands or people from other bands were starting their own labels, and it looked easy, and you wanted to do the same thing. Is that true?
Yeah, it wasn't something that looked easy. It just was the reality that it could be done. So
okay.
If you're looking back in the 80s, early 90s, in particular, I was looking at Discord.
Okay, yeah.
And I was and still am very influenced by the philosophy of Ian Mackay and just kind of that almost fanaticism of Fugazi and doing the all-age shows and not selling merch, even though I sold merch.
Right.
But like the $5 doors, it was crazy. They would play really big venues for $5, and it was pretty cool.
So were these labels kind of demystifying things for you? I mean, I imagine that there obviously wouldn't have been as many DIY labels as there are today.
Yeah, it was the connection of musician and label. So you had
Right.
Ian and Discord, you had Greg Ginn and SST, you had Brett Gurewitz, Epitaph, even
Right.
Fat Mike was just started Fat Records.
Oh, okay.
Even Larry Livermore with Lookout, he was in the Lookouts, so he was in a band, but became successful through his label. So I just saw that correlation of you don't really have to wait for someone else to dictate your future. And I even think I saw like the MC Hammer behind the music.
Yeah.
And he was talking about being offered a major label deal early on. He's like, yeah, he kind of crunched the numbers. He's like, this is a terrible deal. I could just sell more doing it myself.
Wow.
Early on, I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I can do this myself too.
I think MC Hammer went bankrupt though.
Yeah, well, that's when he became successful. He got crazy.
He got crazy.
Taco Bell ads.
So okay. So let me ask you then. So you're thinking of starting a label, and you see that correlation of being, because you were in bands, right, at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean that's not hugely common. I mean, most artists, most creative types don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. So where did that come from?
I still don't know if I have that. I just felt like I had good taste in music. Like we would tour. So I'm talking specifically Skank and Pickle, which toured heavily from 89 to 96.
Okay.
So it was like, what a great opportunity to find bands. You would tour and you'd play Gainesville, Florida. And the opening band is this small band called Less Than Jake. And I would go, wow, this band's really good. And you end up putting out that record, and then you go to Chicago and you meet these teenagers named in a band called Slapstick.
Yeah.
Put out their record. I had the ability where the other members in the band, because it was a collective at first, even though I did all the work, because I think in every band you have one guy that's kind of in charge of the business. That's what seems to be the common thread. And that was my case with Skank and Pickle.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's like the one guy who does their social media.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, the one guy who could write letters or send emails or whatever. Oh, that's interesting. But I mean, inevitably, if you're starting a label and if things get going, your music has to take a back seat. Was that the case?
That was the case. So we had actually, it was May of 96. I remember it clearly. We had just played a show. And I told the band, I said, I can't do this. I was pretty burnt out from touring because we were averaging around 200 shows a year.
Wow.
And this was no manager, no record label. This was just doing it ourselves.
Wow.
And I was burnt out. And I said, I'd like to take a break. But we were starting to do really well. And so I said, if you want to continue without me, I totally understand. In my mind, thinking there's no way they can do it without me, because I was the main singer. But then the next day we had a show in Santa Barbara, California, and I drove separately. And when they arrived, they said, we're going to keep going. I said, okay. And then that's when I decided to start Asian Man that day, is because we had the collective with the band called Dill Records. And then right when that happened, on my drive home, Asian Man was starting in my mind.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great moment that's still fresh in your memory.
Very fresh.
And so you were in this, like, what kind of drew you to this? Because obviously like punk and ska has been kind of the foundation genre wise. Like, what drew you to that? Was it the community? Was it just teenage angst? Was it the music?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of teenage angst and the music.
Yeah.
I caught the tail end of the two-tone movement from England.
Okay.
So I was able to see some of the bands on their last tours in their original formation, like Madness,
okay,
Bad Manners, The Specials, and then it was over. They stopped touring, and so this third wave was starting with the bands like the Toasters, Fishbone, the Untouchables, and we had a great local band here called the Uptones, and I just got obsessed with ska. I was so into the music, the dancing, the fashion. I was very much in, like, everything had to be authentic. Like, my suits had to be from the 60s.
Yeah.
My ties, I mean, it couldn't be just a skinny tie. The tie had to be from the 60s. I was really meticulous.
Oh, wow. Sorry, what are we talking here? Mid 90s? Early 90s?
I would say this is in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
So 85, 86, when I started getting into like rude boy ska fashion.
Wow.
And then heavily influenced by the two-tone band's look. And in particular the Specials. And then I loved it. I loved going to shows and just, you're young. I was probably 16, and it was just fun. It's fun, especially Fishbone. Fishbone was just such a good live band. Right. And they were young too, even though they were on a major label. They're only a few years older than me. So
I associate ska. I mean, I was in high school in the mid to late 90s, and so I mean there was, maybe that was the tail end, but I associate ska with California. But is the origins in UK, or what's the deal?
Origins are in Jamaica, actually. So
okay.
So the godfathers of ska is Bob Marley. Wow. And the Wailers, and the Scotalites. The Scotalites are the godfathers of the sound of rocksteady and ska and blue beat. And then, so if you look at any of the old recordings of Bob Marley, the backing band are the Scotalites. Wow.
No way.
And they were the backing band for everybody. So it's pretty cool. You can hear that distinct sound. The drummer is this guy named Lloyd Nibbs. He invented that one drop. And so it's a very distinct sound, and just it's such a cool sound. One of my favorite beats.
That's so interesting that I've been reading a little bit about the history of hip hop and how it goes back to Bob Marley and to Jamaica, and it's interesting how hip hop and ska kind of went off in two different directions, but came from the same area.
I had no idea that hip hop claimed some influences from Jamaica. That's cool.
Yeah. So let me ask you about ska, because I mean, it holds a special place in my heart from the 90s. And I wasn't all in like you were, but I definitely loved it. And I'm kind of curious as where it's at today. And like, I'm not sure, obviously it didn't die, but it feels like it was one of these genres that like essentially disappeared, certainly from the mainstream. Was it like so distinctly tied to an era? I mean, has it disappeared, or is it alive and well and I'm just totally wrong?
Yeah, I think it's pretty big right now. It always did well on the underground. So the problem was when the major, and I feel like this happens all the times when major labels take over a sound. So they just went on a signing spree.
Right.
So it was, I mean, let's think of the bands that were signed. No Doubt, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Less Than Jake, Real Big Fish, Steve Ferris. Who else? I know I'm missing. The Blue Meanies got signed to a major label. Who else? The Pilfers. And not everyone made it. The only ones who made it were obviously the Boss Tones, No Doubt, and Real Big Fish got mainstream success. And then Less Than Jake just built this crazy cult following without any like hits. And those bands, especially Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish, have never stopped touring and still draw 500 to 1,000 people in every market, which is crazy to me. But it died out of the mainstream, so there was no more dollars for the major labels. But those bands kept touring, and then there were pockets. It's funny because when it became like taboo, all the bands that were playing ska just started changing their styles, and I just started laughing. I was like, that's just typical.
There is like a 90s resurgence in indie rock now. Is that bringing ska back a little bit too, to more of like the mainstream indie rock?
Well, I think it's just more anything. It's nostalgia. So it's like those people who were listening to ska in the 90s they're not too cool anymore to admit, hey, I like
Yeah.
Suicide Machines and Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish, and I'm ready to go have a good time on and relive my youth.
Right. So in '96, was everything on CD back then?
Yes.
Okay. And so much of what I remember from, especially from punk in the '90s, was the compilation CDs. Was that something that you guys did?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah. And that was that like I remember there's a local label here, Sonic Onion, and then in Canada, and then there was we also talked with Kill Rock Stars, who had a huge compilation for them. What did those do for you?
It exposed us to more people and exposed our bands to more people. That was such a different era when you're thinking about physical sales. I think we had this series called Mail Orders Fun. It was like mail orders fun, mail orders still fun, mail order for the masses. So we're trying to get people to hear our different bands, but also trying to get them excited about the process of mail ordering, which goes back to the Ian MacKaye philosophy of, I remember reading him saying, I don't even care if our records are in stores, as long as you can mail order, that's distribution. And I always thought, that's totally true. So let's keep pushing the idea that, yeah, as long as you can mail order from us, our records are available. But yeah, the comp CDs, I think that first comp CD we sold like close to 100,000 copies, which is just insane.
Were they, remind me, were they cheaper than like the average CD?
Oh yeah. It was like, we even like put it on the artwork, do not pay more than $3.99 for this.
Right. Okay. I remember that. Yes.
And we would go on tour. I still did some touring after in the like late 90s, and I would just sell it, and I would sell like hundreds at the show for $4.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, is crazy to me.
But they're getting
would never happen.
Yeah, $4 or $5, and they're getting like 23 songs
or more. I think we tried to fit fitting 30 bands on these comps.
Right. And do you remember when that golden era of comps ended up started to die?
I do. I wish I had a more exact time frame.
Sure.
But I definitely remember like, oh, that's over.
Oh man.
Because everyone was doing it. And I can't think of anyone who didn't do it. Every label had their own cheap sampler.
Right. I guess probably
died.
But it wasn't the popularity of it that died or the overexposure. It was probably just the death of the CD itself, right?
The death of the physical format.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. Now, let me ask you another thing about and I really should have called up a few of my friends before talking with you, but I have a couple of these diehard punk friends and I remember in the early 2000s, before the current vinyl boom, that they were buying 7-inch records from small punk labels in the US. And I imagine some of these people not even listening to them, but just as collector items. Was there a 7-inch scene for you guys?
Not from Asian Man.
Okay.
We never did like a series. We had talked about doing like a single series. I think Sub Pop had one back in the day where every month you got a different 7-inch.
Okay.
Just never, I was never able to do that. But we put out plentiful 7 inches over the years.
Yeah. And I know I like thinking about, there was this quote I heard from you about that says, as a collector, I love vinyl. As a business person, it's a pain in the ass. Is that an exaggeration? Or like, when did you kind of get into vinyl?
I got into vinyl in high school. So like early 80s, 83, 84, just collecting punk. Just going to the store and just anything that looked punk, I just bought it.
Wow.
So I remember buying like bands I didn't even like. I remember buying the Sex Pistols and just because I heard it was punk.
Yeah.
And then bringing it home and going, oh, this is horrible. I liked more of the melodic punk. So I found myself gravitating towards like the Descendants or 7 Seconds even, because there's some melody in it, versus the, I'm trying to think of bands from that era that were just like that snotty, monotone punk.
Right.
So yeah, I just, but yeah, I like collecting vinyl because that was the format. Right. There was no CDs; it hadn't been invented yet. So we're just buying records.
And what about from the label perspective? Because I mean, we talk a lot with labels about the boom that kind of the the renaissance or whatever of vinyl in the 2000s. How did that impact the label? When did the label switch to 12-inch?
I felt like we jumped on it pretty early on.
Yeah.
I had a gut instinct. Everything was changing, and then so when the vinyl boom happened, we were in the thick of it.
Oh man, that's great.
One thing, so we have a shed in the backyard of my parents' home that we stored a bunch of records, and it was an old shed, and it was like full of Black Widows and had some leaks in it. But I dug through, tried to grab all the vinyl I could find, and there were all the original test pressings. So from like Alkaline Trio, God Damn It, or Maybe I'll Catch Fire. And then what I found out, these things, people were paying ridiculous amounts of money for it. I think I was selling them for like $150 each. I probably could have got way more. But and I didn't even set the price. People were just offering it. So I was like, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then I feel like that's when I went, okay, something's going on with vinyl. And then I just started repressing everything on 12-inch.
Right.
At least the records that people were still interested in. How
did that, now I'm asking from a Canadian standpoint, but how did those records fare in the shed with the weather temperatures?
Not good. I'd say at least 50% of the records that were in there, I had to throw away.
You had to peel off the floor.
Yeah, it sucked. I remember, even though a lot of them were shrink wrapped, they still were damaged because it was probably at that time over 10 years of just sitting in there. Because we did press vinyl on all our early records, even when we started,
like in the 90s.
Yeah.
And was that just like a small demand of a small subset of people interested, or?
Yeah, but still, even then, compared to today's market, people bought so much physical content. Even though CDs was the predominant preference, we were selling vinyl. So I would press like 1,000 to 2,000 records of a lot of our releases.
Wow.
And we, even if they got shipped out to record stores, they all got returned. So that's why I had so many in the shed.
Right. So if sorry, I was just looking over my notes here. You was vinyl an issue for you? Like when things got busy at the plants, like why would you say that was a pain in the ass from a business standpoint?
Because it takes up so much space.
Right. Okay.
The people who buy vinyl are very particular about the shape it comes in. So when you're shipping a 12-inch to Canada, Eastern Canada,
yes,
there's a lot of variables involved of that thing making it without getting bent.
That's right.
And it's very expensive too. So let's say you go through that whole process, it finally gets there, customer opens it up, the cover's bent, they want a refund or they want a new one. Like, I just lost money then. At that point, I've lost money. So usually in that case, if it's like overseas or even Canada, the shipping's ridiculously expensive.
I know.
I just tell them, I'm like, I'll just give you a refund.
Yeah. No, I totally get you. That's we feel this. I mean, the same thing in Canada. Even just shipping within Canada is difficult because, I mean, shipping from Toronto to Vancouver is the same as shipping from me to you, but it's it's brutal even if you're in the same country.
Really? So Toronto to Vancouver is the same as shipping to California?
It's not the same, but it's definitely worse than. It's not the same price if I were to ship within Ontario. Like I could ship, if I ship something locally, it would probably be about $12 or $13. But if I were to ship to Vancouver, it would be $18 to $20.
For one record?
Oh yeah.
For one record in Ontario, it's $12.
Oh yeah, we don't have.
Oh my gosh, you don't have media mail.
We don't have media mail, no, and it's it exceeds the size that they have. So, in fact, I think you can. I've talked about this with a vinyl guy, but 10 inches, not that anybody buys or sells 10 inches, but 10 inches could be shipped for much cheaper, but it's because once you've exceeded a certain size. But yeah. It's brutal. Yeah. And the other thing too, and now this has gotten better with, I think it's with how heavy they're pressing vinyl, but I remember when I was getting vinyl from the US, maybe in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, they were coming and I think they must have been like 130 gram or something, but like sitting out on my porch for an hour in the winter and then bringing it in, they were always warped.
Oh, wow.
But it's gotten a lot better now.
Yeah, 130 gram is pretty thin vinyl.
Yeah, and well, I think in the early days before like people got picky, they were just excited to have the record on 12 inches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you were in your 20s now, like, would you start a label today in this current music business?
It's hard to say. It's really I would not be able to answer that because I'm not 20, and I wouldn't know what it's like. I still meet people who are young and starting labels who are super excited. Yeah. And so I would hope to think I'd still have that excitement. And so maybe the answer would be yes, but I have no idea.
I think I think it must be more daunting to start something in the 90s. Like I look back and I remember in that time period that you're talking about, the CD was such a mysterious disc. And I mean, a lot of our friends didn't have CD burners at home in, early days. And I remember I knew one band in my whole high school. Now I was in the country, but I had one band who had recorded on and released a CD. And it was even then, it was still, the artwork was photocopied. So I mean,
what year was that?
That would have been probably 96. 97. Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't really, now, that's like more of a rural area, but I did not, like the CD was still such a mysterious thing. So I imagine if I wish I had started a label back then, that would have been so much fun, but I wouldn't even known like where to find the plants. I mean, what was that like, trying to make a CD back then?
It wasn't that hard. We had this magazine called BAM, Bear Music Magazine, and they just had adverts in there, and you just be like, press 1,000 CDs, and so we called a number, and like, this is what you need to do.
And how expensive was that?
Like, I feel like it was way more expensive then than it is now
to do CDs. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the inflation has gone down versus going up.
Right.
Gosh, I feel like it was maybe even like for 1,000 CDs. Up to like $3,000.
Oh my gosh.
Whereas now you can get 1,000 CDs for $900.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Oh man, that's pretty daunting. I mean, that's a daunting investment.
Yeah.
And was that
100%?
Yeah. And what would what could you sell them for at shows?
I sold them for $10.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really surprising.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you.
Yeah, I'm sure we could have sold it for more, but I was, again, going to that Ian MacKaye philosophy of cheap prices.
Yeah. No, I think that's great.
That's what I was going for. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, I know we did our first CD in 91, and then at a record release, I think we sold like over 300 CDs. So,
oh man,
we had broken even on that, just on the record release show.
On the release party. Oh, yeah. That's so great.
We were very excited.
I think that like selling a CD for $10 back then would have probably been pretty ill advised. But everybody else who is selling them for $25 has a garage full of them. So I would much rather.
Wow, people were selling them for $25. That's crazy.
Well, I think the average CD. And now again, this is from a Canadian perspective, where some of them were maybe imports, but $20 would definitely be the average of a CD, I think, in the late 90s, for sure. Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense. So if we're talking Canadian, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so I think $10. I just think that's a great thing. I mean, that's kind of, you're talking about inflation. I mean, that's what CDs were at the end. By the time Best Buy was killing them, they were selling them for $8.99 and $9.99.
That's right.
So you were ahead of the curve. I asked a bunch of labels recently what kind of challenges that they face, and I'm talking about small and up and coming labels, and the majority of the responses I got were around the issue of marketing and how to get music heard and how to stand out on New Release Friday. Have you cracked that code? Do you have like a marketing strategy that you stick to for every release?
No, we do nothing. My marketing strategy is to do nothing, honestly.
Really?
We do nothing. We have no, and I tell the band straight up, I say, I'm not going to do nothing for you.
That's great.
In a lot of cases, I try to talk them out of putting their record out with me because I'm not going to do anything.
Oh man.
But that's
your strategy.
That's my strategy. And after telling them all this, if they're still interested, I'm like, okay, well, they have nothing to complain about if after I tell them. And usually I'll even like email them like kind of just like a quick like tidbit of what we talked about on the phone, just so that I could go back to it if they ever complain. And it never happens. I mean, it's happened a couple times, and then I'll go, this is not what I do. It's such a different label. I just don't care. I've never done like sound scans or like trying to get on the Billboard charts. Like I could care less.
Wow. But you've had records that, have been very successful.
Yeah, I think that's where the misconception comes from in terms of the size of the label.
Right.
I think people are very surprised that we have no staff.
Yeah.
It's because we've released a ton of records that did really well.
And I find that interesting. And I mean, so when you're talking about a marketing, and I get that, but the artists are getting heard because of the name, because of the history of the label. Is that what you think?
The ones that are lucky, yes.
Right.
Like, I mean, a lot of them flop, and that's just the way it goes. It really lies on the band's shoulders in terms of getting their name out, and that's touring. Without touring extensively, it's really hard. Right. And every so often, it just kind of happens, and I'm not, and I don't know why. I've never known why band A does better than band B.
Right.
Like I could listen to, let's say like Alkaline Trio, for example, which was a very successful band, but why did they not get to that next level?
I see. You're saying like today, like why are they?
Yeah. Why did they not get like as big as like a Rise Against?
Right.
Like, I just never understood why band A got bigger than band B.
Yeah.
And nothing really made sense to me.
So you're signing, okay, but ultimately you boil every record down that you release, and you are just a big fan of it. Is that the thing? You just love the record. You don't care what people think of it.
That, and also, I mean, I've put out records I don't even like, but I like the people.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it comes down to character. I want to work with people who are active in like the DIY scene. People who are rooting for other bands and not about what can we do for ourselves. I like seeing bands that put on shows in their community, are part of like house show circuits, and are constantly helping touring bands, giving all the money to touring bands when it's a local show. I like that idea of community over profit, and so that's what I'm looking for: bands that are there at shows, watching other bands, and not just. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. Do you have a lot of demos that come in?
Every day. So physical demos no more, but it's all just. I get these. I wish I could share you some of these emails. It's funny to read. It's like I feel like a lot of them are really expecting me to put out their record.
Yeah. Does anything ever stand out to you? Like, do you ever find something in there?
I don't think I've ever released something just from a demo.
Wow.
It's always been word of mouth.
Yeah.
So my advice always to bands is build something.
Yeah.
They'll come to you. You don't go to them.
Right.
They will come to you. If you can create a buzz, labels will be knocking on your door. And that's always been the case.
Well, even like having one of the labels on your roster speak on the behalf of a unsigned band would be better than just them cold emailing you.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what happens. A band that I'm friends with will go, you got to check out this band. and then I will check it out because I trust them.
Yeah. It's talking about some of the modern bands. What's the story with Joyce Manor? I love that band so much. I love their discography. I love how prolific they are. I remember they did something with 6131 and then Epitaph. Like, what's their connection with Asian Man?
So I played a solo show, I think in 2005 in San Pedro, California. It was a DIY show over a cliff. San Pedro is a beach town,
okay,
like a working class beach town. So they do these. There's a place called Sunken City that if you watch The Big Lebowski, a lot of that's in San Pedro. And they just pulled a generator. We did a show off a cliff. It was me, Matt, and Kim.
Wow.
Toys to Kill. And I needed to go to the airport, and I just asked, "Hey, can anyone take me to the airport?" And this one young guy said, "Oh, I can do it." And then he took me to the airport, and he played me his band's demo. I didn't think anything of it.
Oh, he played you the demo in the car?
Yeah, it was the singer for Joyce Manor, but before Joyce Manor existed.
Okay.
And then a few years later, Joyce Manor was playing a show in San Jose, and I went to it. And the singer came up to me and told me, "Do you remember the show? That was me that brought you to the airport." And I'm like, "Oh." And that's how we started talking. And then they had already built a buzz. They had released their self-titled record on 6131.
Okay.
And then he just asked me, he's like, "Would you be interested in putting out our next record?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Wow.
No, it was easy as that.
And they did a full length with you?
A full length that was clocking in at, I think, 12 minutes long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their songs are so short, especially their first two records.
So you re-released their self-titled?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great record. That's a great record. I mean, they're all great.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky to get that record because I think that's their hit record.
Yeah. Well, I think I probably came into them when they for Never Hung Over Again. That was probably like the first time a lot of people heard about them, probably because that was like, I think that was their first Epitaph. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that your demo policy is somebody has to drive you to the airport.
Yes.
And they'll get signed.
You'll get signed.
It's funny. Like in the industry, you hear some stories that are just so cliche. Like they're kind of like almost like they were written by a Hollywood screenwriter.
Right.
That a kid drives you to the airport, plays you the demo in his car. That's funny.
But I didn't remember. I don't remember the music at all. I don't remember it being good, at least.
But it wouldn't have been like it wouldn't have been their self-titled. You don't think?
No, it was a different band. I can't remember the name of the band, but that's how at least we started talking.
Right.
Barry brought that up. Like, "Do you remember this?" And I said yes. And
oh gosh, that's amazing.
Our friendship started there.
Were there any bands over the years that you missed out on or regret not signing when you had a chance?
Yeah, I don't know if it would have come to fruition, but I had seen At the Drive-In play.
Okay.
They played in Long Beach, California. They opened up for Manor Astroman.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think, maybe 40 people at the show, but they were playing like they were playing in front of 100,000. It was the most intense live thing I'd ever seen in a long time, at least. And their manager at the time was this guy named Blaze, and he gave me a couple of their early releases, a couple of EPs. He said, "We're looking for a label. If Asian Man would be interested, that'd be cool." Yeah. And I remember listening to the music, and I just didn't like it. And so I passed on it. And I don't know if they would have accepted, but that was one where I was like, you always go with live show over.
Oh, really?
Over music, because you can't replicate a live show. You can be a shitty band and put out a good record.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Especially
you can't
today.
Be a great live band. You can't fake that.
Oh man, that's interesting. Hey, what did you guys do with 5 Iron Frenzy? I saw that on Wikipedia. I had one of their CDs back in the day.
Yeah, we did. We put a 7-inch out. That was it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was like, what was it called? Miniature Golf something. Adventures in Miniature Golf.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I imagine there's bands who like feel like it's almost like a an honor, like a rite of passage to release something with Asian Man. I feel like at some point in their career. Do you ever feel that?
Yeah, and I've been told that.
Yeah. Are you okay with that?
Hey, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier now.
You know what's something interesting is I heard from other labels that have been around for a while that eventually a strong back catalog can really help sustain a label financially. Is that true? Like, does the success?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And does it allow you to take chances on new things?
Yes.
Really?
I would make so much more money if I just stopped putting out records and just sold the back catalog.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's what I do. I keep taking chances and putting out new bands, and I lose a lot on them, but that's okay because I'm still doing well from the back catalog.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you just,
I think that's great.
That's why you're doing the label. At least that's the reason I'm doing it. Is like I'm trying to help bands. Whether it does or not is another discussion. But at least I'm trying, and it's something that's still fun.
I think that's a beautiful thing, and I mean, I know there's been a little bit of talk about the longevity of owning the masters. Like that's kind of a bit of a hot topic right now in the industry, but I think there is kind of a beautiful thing about some of these artists from the 90s who are, in a way, supporting the next generation. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's very cool, but also very sad when you see labels disintegrate. I think when Lookout Records went under, it was such a shock that it happened, or how they could let it happen when you have a catalog that includes 2 Green Day records, Operation Ivy, Screeching Weasel catalog, Queers catalog, Mr. T catalog, Avail. It was just insane.
Yeah.
For that to crumble because they didn't pay their artists sucks. And then same with No Idea Records. What a staple in punk.
And
it's gone.
And when you say gone, where do the masters go? Like are they bought by someone else through like a bankruptcy thing, or?
I'm not sure with Lookout. I think Lookout just gave their masters back to everybody.
Okay. That's great.
And I don't know what No Idea is doing, but I'm sure they're doing what they have to do, whatever the bands are demanding. But I think more than anything, it's just sad. Like, I feel like those 2 labels are so instrumental in punk, in the history of punk, and for them to fold because of monetary reasons. Mm-hmm. And the monetary reasons are because they mishandled their funds.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, but that's, that just seems to be a common thread when you
definitely
when I talk to bands. The only thing I offer bands is clear accounting. I've never missed an accounting session.
Wow.
In 24 years.
Wow.
I used to do it monthly, which is insane.
Wow.
Monthly accounting.
Wow.
But now I do it quarterly.
Quarterly. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's a good thing. I've heard that the licensing and the masters and the lost masters is a big issue for bands from your, from the 90s and early 2000s who are looking to now press on vinyl for the first time. They don't know who owns the rights to their music. They don't know where even the recordings are, Yeah,
that's gotta suck.
Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, some of these bands like punk artists were a little bit more prolific than other bands, and they might have a 10 or 15 records, and half are with this label that no longer exists, half is with this label that's owned by AT&T or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's brutal. Thinking about another cool thing I remember, I want to ask you about this. When we were talking with Sub Pop, and I've brought this up on the show a lot because I think it's such a really cool thing, but every year there's like a new batch of teenagers who are discovering Nirvana for the very first time, or they're discovering, Alkaline Trio or No Effects, or just a genre entirely. Have you seen this reality play out where they're basically like, we're creating new teenagers every year who can discover the back catalog?
Oh yeah, that's the gift that keeps giving. That's great. When you have a classic punk record or any record, whether it be the Beatles or Aretha Franklin, if you put out a good record, it's gonna sell forever.
Are you ever tempted to reissue the crap out of some of these successful records, or to milk the fans?
Oh, I have. I have. Yeah.
That's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, because I'm a fan and I buy that kind of. I love that stuff.
If there's a demand, usually it's not the stuff that's out of print. There's not a huge demand, so it's usually I'll only press like 300 to 500. But
oh, that's great.
The hope is that they will sell, and a lot of times it doesn't. I'll sell half of it, and then I'm stuck with a couple hundred records.
Yeah.
But I like reissuing the back catalog, and it's fun for everybody. It's fun for the fans. It's fun for the artists to see their stuff on wax if we never put it out in the first place.
Yeah.
On vinyl.
Have you ever done? I mean, going back to that compilation, have you done a 12-inch vinyl compilation?
I have, but not any of the reissues of those comps because they're just too long.
Yeah,
we did a series called Asian Man Music for Asian Man People, which is it's a little parody on rap music for rap people from the 80s. Okay. Comps. But it's just, in our case, we just had Asian Man bands covering Asian Man bands.
Oh, that's cool. That's nice.
So it's those are fun. And and we just did it. We did it for our record club, and I made like a small amount available to the public. So those are really hard to get.
I'm sure you've got some things working on that you can't share yet, but is there releases planned for the 25th or some sort of celebration like that?
To be honest, no. I did a 15-year one, which was massive.
Yeah.
It's very stressful because I'm not good at hiring people. I try to do everything myself.
Right.
So I tried to, then I did the 20-year, and my process was, okay, I got to make it easier, simpler, get more people to help me. And then that one was stressful too.
Oh man.
Like to the point of insomnia. Like I didn't sleep.
Oh shoot.
There was a good 50 hours of no sleep, and I don't want to do that again. So I don't think I'm going to do a 25 year.
Just a Spotify playlist.
Yes, I'll do. I'll make a post on Instagram saying thank you for 25.
Oh, that's great. Listen, I love your ethos so much, and I loved getting to kind of deep dive in a little bit into your history, and it's such a cool thing. And I know our listeners are going to love to hear you talk and to hear a little bit about the label. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. You can find out more about Asian Man Records at asianmanrecords.com. And you can also get a copy of our free guide for independent record labels. If you are in the process, I know a lot of our listeners, not because I've received emails from them, but a lot of our listeners haven't yet started a record label, are thinking about doing it, are inspired by some of these conversations to start a record label. Well, go to otherrecordlabels.com, and we have a free guide that you can download there that will give existing labels and soon-to-be labels some advice from our previous guests on navigating the challenges of running a record label. Thanks so much for listening.